I think that, I think my life began when I transitioned. My real life, my true life began. And I think that after 25 years, which is how long I've been Julia, and I look back and I see what I overcame. And I don't want to make this sound like I'm some kind of, you know, it's just the situations presented themselves to me. I met them and I overcame them. And things like getting back, becoming a teacher. I had no college experience. I went back and I did, you know, I graduated college with honors. That I'm proud of. Getting back into comedy when there was no hope. There should be no reason for me to be back in comedy at my age. I got back at, at 50, 60 or 61 or something like that. And I managed to do the things in the second half of my life that I never could accomplish in the first half.
This is Coop's Comedy Corner. Buckle up because it's funny as Coop's Comedy Corner.
Welcome to Coop's Comedy Corner. I'm going to tell you, people, we have a great show today. And I want to shout out to my sponsors, Laurel Lanes. Laurel Lanes is the ultimate entertainment center. They have 60 lanes of bowling. They have a state-of-the-art arcade games. They have luxury suites, and they have something for everybody. And it's great for corporate events, birthday parties, or just a night out with your friends. And they also have an on-site restaurant called Splits Bar and Grill, which I actually host a monthly networking event called Cocktails with Cooper. And if you host an event there, the first time you host it, they'll give 10% of the proceeds back to your charity. And I'm telling you, they have great food, they have great drinks, they have an amazing happy hour from 4 to 7 on weekdays. They have a lot of stuff going on too. They should get comedy in there. Maybe we'll get comedy with my guests on the show, and that might happen. And they have beer pong, they have trivia, they have it's a great place. And if you're leaving and you're still hungry and you want a sweet, they have an ice cream parlor called Lickety Splits. With these creations they've concocted, and some of alcohol. I've had the bourbon butter pecan, which is very good. So go check it out. Laurel Lanes. Go to laurellainesnj.com. So anyway, we have a great show today. And it's funny, I was taping the other night, and suddenly in the middle of our conversation, the screen went black. And the funny thing is, I was wearing a different hat, and my guest said it was a pork pie hat. So I looked up where a pork pie hat came from, and the pork pie hat comes from a resemblance to the Melton Mowbray pork pie filled pastry in the late 1800s, and it looked like the brim of the hat. So my guest, Julia Scotti, there's your information about the pork pie hat.
So it was a pork pie hat.
I guess you're right. I don't really have a name for it, but people, my guess is Julia Scotti. You know her from AGT. You know her from the documentary Funny That Way. She has a album Primal Cuts. She has
no, wait, it's not Funny That Way, Steve. It's not Funny That Way. That's not the name of the document. It's Julia Scotti, Funny That Way. They have to type that in if they want to see it. Otherwise, Funny That Way means you'll just get kittens doing the cha-cha or something. So come on, do your research, Steve, for crying out loud. Huh?
I got my research, Julia. I wrote it down. I have everything. I have your dry bar special. I have more funny women of a certain age. Primal Cuts. Hello, boys, I'm back. It's all down here, Julia. But Julia, I'm glad to have you back. How are you doing?
I'm glad to be back. I had the plumber here just a little while ago. Came out, he put a faucet in. My outdoor faucet was leaking. It was just running. I didn't even know it. And he came and he fixed it. So that was, your viewers don't really care about that, but you asked.
Yeah,
that's how I'm doing.
They do, because everyone likes a good faucet story. In fact, my next show, I'm going to do 10 minutes of faucet material.
Faucet humor.
Hey, and yeah, no more dick jokes. It's all faucet humor.
No,
what do you think? Should we start a faucet humor trend?
This guy, I'm telling you, Steve, this guy had a faucet this big. Oh, Maron, I would love to have that faucet in my house, all the way in my house. My house being.
Of course. So I'm sitting here and I'm looking at your wonderful pictures behind you. And there's Kevin Meaney, and Kevin Meaney, who's the late Kevin Meaney, who's one of the funniest people ever. But how did you and Kevin become friends? Did you know him when you first started out, or how did you guys end up touring together and becoming friends?
I knew him, just from, passing in the 80s. And, we'd sometimes work gigs together, or I'd see him at a function. I go, hey, Kevin. So we were never close. Then I came back like 10 years ago. We were working at the Candlelight Theater in Delaware. I forget the name of the town, but it's a wonderful theater, the dinner theater. And Kev was on the show, and he was downstairs in the basement where the dressing rooms are. And we're yakking, as comics are wont to do. He greets you like he remembers you. Because I said to him, "Do you remember?" He goes, "Yeah, sure." Like we do that. We're bullshit artists, right? And so we're talking for a while. We're talking about Jimmy's Comedy Alley in Queens, I'm looking at his eyes because I don't think he really knows me. And I called him out. I said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" He goes, "No." And it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. So he came out late in life as gay, and I came out obviously as transgender. And so I said to him, we should tour together. I said, we got a great product here. And so I came up with the name Big Pants and Hot Flashes. He was Big Pants, obviously, and I was Hot Flashes. And we toured, and it was going really well. And then he up and died on me. And that's the story. We only toured, it was under a year because we just gotten underway, and he was gone.
Now, when you, as you said, you're transgender, and it's funny because when I was in LA visiting my now wife Joanne, I would play clubs, and I kept seeing Julia Scotti. And I'm going, who the hell is Julia Scotti? Like I know all the comics, and now I worked with you when you were Rich Gagliardi, when you were Rich Scotti, when you were Rick Scotti, when you were Rick Scotty Mellencamp. I worked with you when you had all those names, and I didn't know it. And the guy from the Comedy Works, Kaplan, goes, "Oh yeah, you remember that Gagliardi?" And I said, "Oh yeah." So what was it like when you decided to get the surgery? How hard was it, and what is the process? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that you really have to do. I've talked to you about this before. You really have to do live a year in like women's clothing or something, or what is the whole process? Because it's something that I think people need to know more about, because I don't think people understand it all the time.
Well, our incoming president can explain it, that you go to grammar school in the morning and you come home at night in a different gender. It's very simple, Steve. No, that's not how it goes at all. It is a long process. It starts out where I went to a MD, a doctor, and I expressed it after I was 50 years old, or close to 50 when I did it. And they examine you, they do blood work, they do genetic tests to make sure that there's no chromosomal issue causing and they don't know all the causes of people who come out as transgender. So you go on hormones, and you have to be approved by a medical doctor and a psychologist. So I had to go to 3 months of therapy before they would even put me on estrogen. And then you stay on it for how long was it? I guess about almost a year. And then I was feeling wonderful, with it in me. And then after that year, you have to live a year in your new gender. So it's not that simple. It's not as simple as some people would like you to believe. And so I lived a year, and that was the year I taught school. And then the following year, I went to Montreal and had the surgery.
So how long were you when you decided to get the surgery? Were you still doing comedy? Because I remember
No.
you always wore a double-breasted suit. You always wore suits on stage, and you're very
And now I'm a double-breasted woman. I'm sorry, I couldn't help that. Okay.
No, I remember because I worked with you at Mitchell's, and you remember Mitchell's, Joe. That was one of the best. Joe Donato always got up and told that stupid fucking Superman joke, and everyone heard it. And he'd go, and then he'd always sit there, and he was the best club owner because he fed you, he let you drink,
Yeah,
but he'd always
yeah,
say
he
to
was a
me,
good guy.
he goes, don't do that.
Actually, I did a show there. I did a show in the site of the old place about 5 years ago. Uh, Mitch Algarton, a friend, I don't know if you know Mitch, but uh, he was doing a fundraiser, and he did it in the old Palmyra room, and it was kind of cool. It's different. It looks a lot different now, but yeah, Joe's a good guy. Joe's a good guy. What was your
So when
question? Oh,
what about the operation? Were you still doing
that's
comedy, or were you out of comedy at that time? And I know
no.
you
I got out
started.
of comedy. I went. I wanted to become a teacher. Actually, I was getting out of show business. I was in college because I had never gone to college, earlier in my life. So I went back to college at like 47, 48, something like that. And then my senior year, how some kids get cars. I got I got a sex change, if you want to call it that. It's a terrible. I hate that phrase, sex change, because it's not. It's just a reaffirmation uh, of what I feel internally.
So
Did
so
that
you were out
answer
of
your
comedy,
question?
but you a little. How long have you been? How long were you doing comedy before you got out of it? Because you were back in the comic, like the earlier days when it
Yeah,
was
20
like
years. I
really
had 20
booming. You
years
were part
in.
of the boom.
Yeah, I had 20 years in. I
So
actually my last show was on the 20th anniversary of my first show. I like I like order.
what made you get into comedy? I mean, when you look very back, because we all get. I mean, I ended up being. I wanted to make people laugh, and it wasn't until when I was in college, I did this talent contest, and I did a Rick Springfield air guitar, and everyone went crazy, and I felt that adulation. And I was like, I was an insecure guy because I have a lazy eye and all that. And I was like, I want to do this. So, what made you? Were you? Did you need the attention, or what made you want to get into comedy? Because I did it, I think, because I wanted the attention.
Well, we all need attention. I mean, the comics are attention hounds. Love me, love me, love me. Mommy, daddy, look at me. It's that's a case of our arrested development. Yes, there's something in our makeup that craves that adulation, and the minute you get that first applause or that first laugh, that's it. It's like heroin, man. You're hooked. I was a drummer before I was a comic, and I always I hated. I love drums, but I hated being in the background. All the guitar players all got the glory, and I just got shit on, and I had to carry all my drums and everything. So there came an opportunity. There was a Chinese restaurant in Paramus, New Jersey, that was having. It was the very first Jersey gig ever. It was run by a guy named Hal Ennis, and it was at the Jade Fountain Chinese restaurant, and I auditioned for him, and I got like 3 minutes, and that was it. That was the beginning, and that's all I knew. The minute I went up, that's what I wanted to do the rest of my life.
Well, who were some of the comics when you were starting out? Like, who were the people, your contemporaries? Because I was a Philly guy, and we had Paul Tompkins and Todd Glass and Keith Robinson were a little before us. Then we had
Sure.
Adam McKay. Who were some of your contemporaries?
Oh God, that very first show I told you about, I have the lineup card somewhere. Jackie Martling sent it to me because he was the MC. But on that very first show, Seinfeld was on it. Eddie Murphy was on it. I think Reiser was on it. I think that was the lineup for that day. And people like that would every week. And then I went into New York, and of course they were all working there, and I got to know some of them. And Rita Rudner. And I used to, you know, hit all the clubs in my Volkswagen Beetle. We just tool around the city, and the people that are famous today, they weren't always famous. So those are some of
What
them.
was
Yeah.
it? What were the early days like? what was it like getting stage time? Because when I lived in LA, like every place had stage time. No one got paid, but had stage time. But for you, when you were starting out, it's always fascinates me because the New York scene was happening, and all you people were just you were early. Like when I started, there was more people, but now there's like 2,000 comics. But
Yeah.
back then, I mean, what was the scene? Did you go to New York and then you made it? You got into a club like Strip or Catch a Rising Star. Then you went on the road. What was your process as a comic? Because I know, as I said, I work with you at Mitchell's, and I'm sure you probably work for Andy
Right.
Scarpati. But
Yes.
where did you start? Like when you in New York, how did your career branch out?
Well, because of the Chinese restaurant, I got to know a lot of people, and so went into New York, and the scene was broken down. The scene was much more structured back then. You went to audition at a club, either Strip or Catch or the Improv, and I think it was once a month, and you would line up outside the club in the morning. A lot I did anyway, and at the end of the day, they would come and give out numbers. And you come back that night, and you do your 3 minutes. And if you passed auditions, you could hang out at the club. You'd phone in your, avails. You didn't always get them, but you hung in there. So while I was doing that, I was an improv comic. I was passed at the Improv, the original one on 44th and Ninth. But there were a whole bunch of little clubs in Manhattan and in Brooklyn, like Pips, that we could work. So we would go do those clubs. And when it got late at night, we'd go to our home club, in my case, the Improv, and hang out at the bar and hopefully get a late night spot, maybe. you know. And when the boom started to happen, work became plentiful around the country. And guys like Jerry Stanley and people like that, if you had a car, you worked. That was a big. You didn't have to be that funny. Jerry would put you on as the MC, and you would pick up the comics at the Improv because it was close to the Lincoln Tunnel, and you drive to the gig with them, and you drive them back, and he'd give you, I think an extra $20 for tolls. So
I worked. I think I worked for Stanley once. He had the White House Junction, I believe. He
yes,
booked that. I think I did that for him. I think that's the only time I worked for him. But like
it was a
being
great
from the
room, by the
Philadelphia
way.
area, it was great. But that was like he was a name. Like back then, there was the Bookers, and then there was the late Dennis Ross and the Phil Selman, and
Hmm.
they never paid you. And then there was a few other things. So you're getting on the road a lot. Are you enjoying being on the road? Like once you get out of New York, are you enjoying the lifestyle? Because I know it can be a grueling lifestyle.
It's when you're young, and I was an older. I was 28 when I started. And that's pretty old for a comic. I mean, these were kids who were 21, 29. Eddie was, I think, 18 or 19 when I met him. And, but going on the road is exciting. Here you are, you're in show business, supposedly. But you come from New York. And at that time, if you remember, comedy was king. We were like rock stars. And, we'd go and do our gig and uh, these little towns, and they treat you like a rock star. You're from New York. You're a New York comic. Wow, wow. And if you had TV, you were a god. So yeah, it
So
was exciting, and then it
okay,
wasn't.
so yeah, so that's why did you decide to get out of comedy? Like I stopped. I remember the time I stopped. Well, there's a few of the reasons, but one of them was I was playing the Funny Farm in Youngstown, Ohio, and I wasn't having fun on stage. I felt like I was in a zone, and I'm like I didn't get into this to be like a 9 to 5. I felt, and it sounds odd if you've never been in a business, but you might know what I'm talking about. It was like
Yes.
I might as well be a fucking accountant because I have a business degree. I'm not enjoying this. I'm just dreading the 5 hour or 6 hour ride home.
Yep.
And
When
that's
it
one of the
becomes
reasons
a
I got out of
job, yeah, that's exactly what happened. When it became a job, um, then I said, "This is not why I got into comedy," and I quit. I just walked away. And I knew I was going to become a teacher, so I taught for 7 years. But I got back in almost accidentally. I wasn't planning to come back in. But once I was in, it just things started happening that never happened before. And the thing I learned when I came back, I didn't come back for fame and I didn't come back for money. Well, money would be nice, but I didn't come back for the fame part, which is what I wanted in the first go around. I came back this time because I wanted to be a really good comic. I wanted to write material that was different and that I could express myself in ways I couldn't before because I was living in this. I was hiding who I really was. So coming back as Julia, there was no more secrets, and so it gave me great freedom uh, to write for
How long?
that character.
How long till after the your procedure when you became Julia? How long did it take you to get on stage? And I want to hear about the first time because I remember when I got on stage, I had like stage fright. I'm like, I kept thinking I'm going to forget everything. And I went up on stage and I'm like, and I booked myself to do a 30-minute set. And I was maybe doing like, I was living in LA. I was maybe doing 6-minute sets. And like, I got to the show, I'm like, and I ate it. I couldn't follow the MC because I'm like, I have 7 minutes. And it was
Right.
just crazy. But but so for you, how long till you decided to get back on stage? And then you say by accident, how did it happen by accident? Because my thought is always, we can say it's by accident, but there's a subliminal thing going, I want to get my ass
Yeah.
back on stage, as you wouldn't be at a comedy club or wherever. So what happened? How long was it and what happened?
Well, I was away. Let's see. I stopped doing stand up in 2000, and uh, I got back in 2010 or 11, I think it was. And so what happened was Nick, Nick Cosentino, right? Remember Nick? Okay,
Nick Carmen. I
he
know Nick
was,
Carmen. Nick
yeah, he
Carmen.
was paying a visit. He was paying a visit to Philly. We were walking around Philly one day, and we were down around where Barney's place used to be on South Second Street, and we were talking about the old days, and we came across this little bar whose name escapes me at the moment, but we went upstairs. They had a little room up there that wasn't being used. And we said, this would be a great showcase room for comics in the spirit of the old improv to come after their gigs, or people in the theater could come after their gig and just hang out and sing or dance or whatever the hell they did. And that's so we opened what we call Julia Scotti's Comedy Test Kitchen with, uh, oh my God, she's going to kill me. Chris Rich
Okay.
was, yeah, she was, and the third person escapes me too. Marty,
Marty
we had
Ullman.
a piano player. No, anyway, it was a showcase. So singers would come and we do sketches, we do improv, and I was enjoying myself, because I was doing it for the love of comedy, not for money. What happened was a reporter came in, I guess heard about this from the Philadelphia Gay News, and was going to do a spot about the show. And I met with him for an interview, and I mentioned to him that I was transgender, and he goes, "Well, that's the story right there." He goes, "It's nice that you're doing the show, but this is the story. A comic comes back after 10 years, and so the next thing I know is I'm on the front page of the Philadelphia Gay News. My mug is plastered all over the city, and now I'm all of a sudden I'm back in comedy again. I'm like, oh shit, you know. So people started calling me, and I started going back. And then Kaplan, it was Chris Rich and Kaplan who got me back on stage. Chris, I had met for lunch. We hadn't seen each other in 10 years. We were talking, and she said to me, "When are you coming back to stand up?" This is before the comedy test kitchen. I was chronologically out of order. She said, "When are you coming back to stand up?" I'm not coming back. I'm 60 something years old. I'm almost 60. I'm not, I'm an old fart. I'm transgender. Who's going to want to see me? She goes, you want to. I go, yeah. I did. So it happened that she was working at the Comedy Works in Bristol in a couple of weeks, and Kaplan said to her, "Well, if she, meaning me, wants to come in and do something, she was funny before. She'll still be funny. She could tell her to come in." So I wrote some. I think I wrote like 5 minutes of material, and I went up there the first time. And the one thing I wanted to do was be honest. Well, two things, and fearless. And I knew that meant talking about being trans. I know I'm going on. This is a long story, but it does
I
have an
love it.
ending.
I love it.
Okay.
I love stories like that.
Okay. So I went up the first time and I looked at the audience and I said, I've been away from comedy for a while, went back to college, got a divorce, and what else? Oh yeah, I had a sex change operation. And nothing, crickets, nothing. And
Wow,
I go,
that's a great bit.
you would think, right? But and I thought the same thing. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, they don't believe me. I did too good a job of transitioning. They don't believe me. I go, no, really? That's what happened. Still nothing. And I went, so I did the 5 minutes that I got off. And Kaplan says, he coming back? I go, I don't know. He says, come back. So about 2 weeks later, I came back and I went up there and I just grabbed the room by the throat and I'm getting the laughs, right? All of a sudden, because I had to shake off the dust. I come off stage. Now, Kaplan, it's like this little ball guy, right? He comes walking by me. I'm coming off. He comes walking by me without stopping. He just mutters under his breath. That was not so fucking hard. And he just kept walking out the room. So
I love Kaplan. You know what's funny about Kaplan? I love when Kaplan would go on stage and talk for like
oh,
20 minutes about the
I
specials and the mashed potato bar. And you're like, dude, just bring us on stage, man.
I told him, I said, I yelled at him so many times. I go, don't you dare go up there and do 10 minutes of bullshit stuff like that. Anyway, so that's how I came back. And from there, and doing the comedy test kitchen and the page, the article in the Gay News, my managers at the time was Kathy Caldwell. You know Kathy, right?
You do Comedy Centric with her.
Yeah. Well, she managed me in the beginning. She knew nothing about managing, but I said, "You're the one. I want you to manage me." Right. So about year, 2 year and a half, 2 years into it, we get an email from a talent scout at AGT asking if I would be interested in appearing on the show. Kathy sends me an email asking that exact question. I go, I don't want to be at some fucking game show. I'm not good at competition. I don't want. I'm not. She goes, don't be an asshole. They're practically handing this to you on a platter. So I went and I auditioned up against college, and there was no. I didn't have to wait online. I went in like the Queen of Sheba. I was like, hello everyone. And I got on, and I made it to the quarterfinals. So I don't know which finals I made to, but I did, and it opened up my whole career again. And from that point on, I've been doing it full time again. And so I always say comedy's like the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave.
Exactly.
And here I
It's
am.
true. It's like Pacino. I just want to get up, they pull me back in, and you came. So
Yeah,
now, what was it? Now, when you were rich, did you do any TV? Did you do Evening at the Improv or any of that comedy? No.
I got turned down for everything. You name it, I got turned down for.
So how nervous was it? Were you nervous when you were going to do AGT? Because once again, I think everything happens for a reason. And you came back when, as you said, just to have fun and be fearless and do it for the love of the craft. But when you sat there, in the back of your head, did you ever sit there and think there's like millions? I mean, because that show everyone watched. I mean, what was it? What was the process that first night you're going on TV and you do what, 2 minutes? So as an actor, probably like, what do I do in 2 minutes? I mean, what was your whole mind frame going on stage? Did you not give a it, or did you say, I just want to do well?
Well, a couple of things were happening. I had an opening joke about, getting on a lifeboat and being the last per, and giving up my seat to an old lady, to a young girl because I'm the old lady, and the punchline was fuck that. I didn't get to be this old by giving up my seat, on a lifeboat. That was the joke. That's what I was going to open with, and so, but I wasn't going to do the fuck that line because it was national television. So the producer, I had an alternate line. I don't even remember what it was, but we're backstage, and this place is huge. And I've done theaters before, so it wasn't a new sensation for me. What I hated doing was standing in front of four people who were going to judge me. That's just my personal thing, right? So he goes out, and I wasn't going to do the reveal either. And if I did do the reveal, I wasn't going to do it until after my set. I wanted to be judged on the set only. So I go out and I do the thing, and the producer says to me before I walked out, he goes, "You're going to do the British." He goes, "Are you going to do the line?" I go, "I don't know, Nigel. That was his name." I said, I got to think about it." So I got out on stage, and it's going pretty well. And I got to that point where I was going to say the line, and I just, how we have that meeting in our head? It's like a board of directors in our head. That's what I had. And should we do it? Well, I don't know. And then I thought, well, Nigel's been in this job for 12 years. He knows this audience, and he encouraged me to do the line. So I did it. I went, I said, fuck that on national television. Place went nuts. Absolutely crazy. I was like, okay. So next thing we finished the set, they're standing and they're screaming, and people are trying to lick me. It was a lot of good stuff going on, right? So I think it was Howie Mandel that said, "Why did you stay away for so long?" And I wasn't going to do the reveal. They left it up to me, but I did it afterwards, and again they stood up again. So I felt like coming out on national television. I don't recommend it to everyone, but it's certainly liberating because now everybody knows, I have no secrets anymore. And it gave me this freedom on stage that I never had as Rick. I could do anything now. And it was such a positive thing. And I don't even know what you asked me that got me to this point, but that's the story.
Well, no, you followed. I asked you, what was it like going on stage? And you followed. So was that the first round or the second round? I mean, as you're coming back, are you sitting there going, because you're probably getting recognized now because people watch it. You're probably getting mail of young people who have thought about, coming out or they're transgender. You're probably becoming a role model, which you should be, because you went through all this and you got back on TV, and as you said, you told your story in front of millions of people. So how was it as you were moving on to the rounds? Did you feel like a unity of people really supporting you? Because I know a girl I went to college sat there and she sent me a message on Facebook. She goes, "Do you know Julia Scotti?" And I said, "Yeah, I've known her forever." And she goes, "She's so great." And just, so, I mean, that was when you were on the TV show. She didn't talk like that. She didn't say, "Did you know?" But no, but
no, it's the fact that somebody asked you. Yeah.
Yeah. Because she knew I did comedy. She knew I was in LA. So, that's what happens when you do comedy. Everyone thinks you know everybody. Like, they're probably like, "Hey, Cooper, do you know Charlie Chaplin?" I'm like, "No, he died many years ago. I don't know him." They go, "Well, you sure?" I'm like, "No." So it's the thing. They think you know everybody. But I do know you. But so what was it like for you when you were moving on in the rounds? Were you feeling the momentum? Because there's a lot of different talent for a comic. It's hard for the people with some of them, people in America go, "Oh, a transgender comic or a guy who eats fire and spits matches out his ass." They're going to be like, "Oh, they want to see that," because that show has a lot of different acts.
Well, I started to get a lot of publicity, and every article started with transgender comic Julia Scotti, transgender, till the point where I thought that was my name, transgender. And if you go back to YouTube now, the appearances are still on there. And you look at the overwhelming amount of comments were positive, but there was a lot of negativity too, which was very, very hurtful at first. And it was, then I realized as the second appearance and the third came along that I had a responsibility to, uh, I want to say to the trans community in particular, I was given this great gift of being able of having a platform where I could speak about who I was and what I was, and that there were people like me all over the world. And so I took that seriously. And so when I would do press, it was always with that in mind, always with the dignity of keeping the dignity of being a trans person. And no, this is not some uh, lunatic thing that people just do, and they don't just go to school and come back in the afternoon, with a whole new set of genitalia. And so I took that as my personal responsibility, and I still to this day, when I do interviews, I'm doing it right now with you, about who we are as trans people. We've been around since the beginning of time. It's just now you're getting to know us. Really, that's what it is.
So you put out this great message, and then AGT ends now, and your career. How does it affect it? It starts blowing up. Are you getting calls to do shows? Are people wanting to see you now? Because it's so funny. Earlier we talked about back then when you're on the road, a TV credit. TV credit changed everything. But now there's not really TV credits unless it's like an AGT. People don't watch Jimmy Fallon because he's annoying as shit, but they don't watch him because of the comics. People don't. It's not like back in the day if someone did the Tonight Show.
Right.
Like Tom Dreesen told me, he was living in his car and did the Tonight Show, and the next day William Morris signed him, and he was sent to Vegas for like 2 months over and making more money than he ever thought he could make. It's
And
not
that
like
story
that,
repeated itself. Yeah, that story's repeated itself over and over with a million comics we know.
Right. So for you, how did AGT change your career as in getting bookings? Were people reaching out to you, or was it something that you still had to work to get the bookings, but they were just better bookings?
Well, I had Tom Ingenio from Omnipop was at that time just representing me for gigs. Kathy was still quote managing me, but Tom was my booking agent, and he was able to. Obviously, it was a lot easier to get me booked than it had been the night before AGT aired. Suddenly people knew who I was. But there were places that were hesitant to hire a transgender comic. See, the thing I wanted was to be a mainstream comedian because that's what I was before. That's all I know. I wasn't a niche comic. I did not want to work for one group. Uh, I wanted everybody. I wanted to be inclusive, and I was very fortunate. I was able to accomplish that for the most part, and still am. The clubs I work are almost exclusively mainstream. Every now and then during Pride, I'll get an LGBT gig or something like that. But overall, I feel like if the trans person or the trans community is going to be accepted into the world, then they need to get out in the world and work among the people who don't understand them. And that's what I do. You know.
Now you work a lot with Anita Wise. I know that. How do you know Anita? Anita's the nicest person. She did that room, which I want to get you in the Soundplex, and she's so soft spoken, and but she's so funny, and she's someone who left and came back too. I mean, she left the business for a long time. How do you know Anita, and what is your relationship with her? Like, why do you have her as an opener? Because she's funny, but there's tons of funny acts. But how do you know Anita, and you guys work a lot together? How'd that come up?
I've known Anita since the '80s. I mean, we've been friends. We drifted apart when she moved to LA, and when she came back, I met her through the Comedy Test Kitchen. She came in with her late husband, and we kind of Hook reunited there. Um, when she decided she had been out of comedy because she had a terrific career. She's a great writer, and she's and she's got a couple of Tonight shows. She was on Seinfeld. I mean, she had a nice career, and she walked away for it from it. I want to say for love, that she would just. But why did I want to open with her? Well, I was first of all, I wanted to help her, get back in the business because I was doing okay, and some people helped me. They reached out a hand, and I reached out a hand to her, and she said, "Come on, let's, you're so good that you need all you needed to do is get your feet wet again, and your chops will come back." And they did. She what was I going to say about her? Oh, our acts are so different that they never clashed. She, like you said, she's very soft spoken. She's very cerebral. Whereas me, I'm just in your face from the minute I come out. So it's a completely different personality. That's why I like her. And but I just love working with her. You go on the road with her, we have so much fun. That's a
Now
big key too. You know that, right? Going on the
oh, yeah.
road, you don't want to be with assholes.
Oh, I remember doing a show in Kazi's Comedy Corner in
Oh,
Newport
in
News.
Virginia, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember the headliner was that guy who, I think it was Kazi's, maybe somewhere else, but we're at the comedy condo, and there was a pool, and he was that asshole who was married, but then he'd go to the pool and take his ring off and be sitting there, and I'm like, dude, you have a tan line where your finger is. He's like, oh yeah,
Right.
the old line, you can't eat out of the same kitchen, and you work with the, and you be, and then the worst, they'd be awful on stage, it'd be all hack
Yeah.
bullshit, and you go, how is this person headlining? And it's just being such a douche. But it's very important who you work with because there's nothing like being on the road with someone you can't stand.
I'll tell you a story about that. You mentioned pool, and you clicked this story shot off in my head. Back in the 80s and the 90s, whatever it was, I don't know. I was working in the Midwest, and this comic was on. He was middling for me, and he seemed, he had the car, so I was riding with him. I flew into where we were going to go, and we rode from there. So we're in this. I can't even remember the town, but he goes, "I'm going down to the pool." I go, "The pool's not open. It's empty. It's fall. It's like it's cold. Wherever we were, it was cold." I look out the window, and he's down in the pool, the empty concrete pool. He's down there running around. You get to a point where you don't question a comic's insanity, right? So a couple hours go by, and he calls me from his room. He goes, "You got to see this." So, okay. So I go to his room, and he's got the little garbage pail that they put in hotel rooms, right? It's upside down. No, he had it was up right side up, but he had it covered. That's what it was. And we're in the bathroom, and he goes, "Look at this, man." He takes the cover off. There's a rat in there. He found a live rat in the pool. That's what he was chasing, and he put it. And he got it in this thing, right? And it's all yellow. It's all orange. It's like, why is it all orange? Because, well, I've been feeding it Cheetos. I go, so he's got like this doodle dust, cheese doodle dust all over this rat. So he puts the cover back on. A couple hours go by. He calls me again. I go, "What's the matter?" He goes, "The rat died." I go, "Well, geez, that's not a really good endorsement of cheese doodles, if it can kill a rat and nothing kills them." But that's the kind of characters you run into on the road,
No, it's nuts. Some of the people you work with, and you look back, and I was talking to a comic one time. I forget who it was, and back then there was some people who just didn't want to get a job and they wanted to party, and they figured if they could get 30 minutes, they could go out on the road and make $500 to $900, and get free booze and meet women. But they didn't even give a shit about comedy.
no.
But they said this is better than being on the phone going, "Can I sell you a timeshare?" And they said, "Well, we'd rather do this." Because as you said, there was so much work during that time. I mean,
Yes, there
you
was.
work with some acts and you go, what? And they're like, it's like anything. You know, if you have a restaurant and you need servers and there's someone with one arm who can't carry a tray, you'll say, well, you know what? They can take an order or they can remember this stuff. They can work here. And that was then that there was just putting comics up because you had to fill the slots.
There were times when I was when I was still featuring, or if I was emceeing, and I turned down work because it didn't include airfare. Can you believe that? They used to actually pay for our airfare, and for features that doesn't happen anymore. Doesn't even really
Features
happen
don't
with
features
me.
don't make Yeah, features don't make anything anymore. I was talking to someone. I mean, it's
No.
amazing how the pay rate changed. And what's crazy is because there's so many comics, the comics don't give a crap. Like they just go on and they figure they want to be a star. On my other podcast, Cooper Talk, I was talking to Matt Servito yesterday, who was Agent Harris in The Sopranos, and he
Uh-huh.
said, you know, when he went to Juilliard, and he said like when he got out, he meets someone at an audition, and they go, "I just want to be a movie star." He goes, "They didn't give a shit about that crap." And they just wanted to get into it. So a lot of the comics now, they don't have to pay because there's someone who's going to do it for free. I mean, in LA, it used to be, oh, you're doing it for the exposure. It's like, oh, really? Like we're doing a coffee bar in Hawthorne, California. I'm sure there's agents coming out there. So
In a
it's crazy.
laundromat,
But you're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you're back on the road. You're doing great. I want to hear about the documentary. Which people is Julia Scotti funny that way? Not just funny that way. Julia. And I watched it. I watched it actually. I was on the treadmill and I watched it. And this was a while ago because I don't go to the gym right now because the road is under construction and I don't want to drive backwards. So I don't so
Sure,
much there.
I get
But I
that.
watched. Yeah, I watched it at the church. How did the documentary come up? Because it was great, and I love documentaries. How did the documentary come up?
I was in. I had a gig in Nantucket, or on Nantucket, not in it. Then I'd be underground. I was on Nantucket, and Jane Condon was the producer. She did the show there at a theater. She does it every year. And after the show, this woman introduces herself. And she said her name is Susan Sandler, and it turned out she's the woman who wrote the movie Crossing Delancey, which was a big hit back in the right. And she's also now
Amy Irving,
a
Amy
huh?
Irving, Amy
Amy
Irving,
Irving.
Amy
Yes,
Irving, and
yeah,
Peter Rieger. Peter Rieger.
yeah, exactly. And she also is a professor. She teaches screenwriting at NYU Tisch, prestigious school, right? So we go out for drinks afterwards, all of us, and we're talking and yakking. And I'm at the time I said, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing a one-person show," which I was. And she said, "Well, if I can help you in any way, I would like, I'd love that." And I thought, wow, here's a Golden Globe nominated screenwriter offering to help me. I go, absolutely. So we would talk that when we got back to New York. She lives in New York. We got back there, and we would stay in touch and talk. And she she goes, "Would you send me any archival material you have?" And I had boxes and boxes of it. I just went to her house one day and I delivered it because she said, "I think this is not a one-person show. I think it's a movie." She goes, "Would you consider letting me do a documentary about your life?" Now, you and I both know the level of bullshit in our business. And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Film. Oh, of course. Why not? Yeah, do a film on me. Yeah. I'll talk to you later." And and then one day I get a contract in the mail, and there's a film crew a couple of weeks later showing up. I'm like, "Oh, she wasn't kidding." Right. So 6 years later, it took 6 years. She filmed me doing all kinds of. She filmed me in the hospital after my heart surgery. I mean, she. I love Susan to death. She's just the sweetest human being, and so dedicated to her craft. Uh, and she's a remarkable person. One of the most remarkable people I've ever met. And so she gets this. She got all this footage, and they edit it, and they da 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 da. Next thing you know, here's a movie, And that's how it happened.
Now, were you satisfied with the end result? Because it's showing your life. I mean, it's very personal stuff. I know your kids were in it. It's very, you know, that's got to be hard. I mean, I always think if someone's watching a biopic about themselves, but a documentary, it must be. I mean, what was going through your mind? Like, did you see it this before this big screening? Did you see the copy, or when did they watch it to you? And what was your thought? And did you have any input if you wanted something cut out?
I didn't see one frame of the footage until she had it. Um, it had to be uh, scored. It hadn't been scored yet. Okay, but it was complete, and it hadn't been color corrected yet. So there were a couple of processes that still had to be done. But the rough, the story, the movie was cut the way it was going to be eventually. So she asked me to come down to NYU, and we had a little screening room there, and I watched it, and I was like, you have to trust the person. I'll take a step back. If somebody wants to do this thing about you, you have to trust them. And she had the credibility uh, and the energy between us was so good that I trusted her. And I don't trust anybody. But she did a good job, and I knew she would. I was a little embarrassed at times, because you see yourself up on screen and go, "Oh my God, I'm fat. Oh my God, I'm ugly. Oh my God, did I do that?" So it's to be objective and say she did a great job. She could have done a better job with a different subject because I don't find myself that interesting. But she did a great job. She's a brilliant woman, an absolutely brilliant woman, and one of my
So
heroes.
did that help you one of your career a little bit? I mean, you were already on track, but then people sit there really, or did that help you in the LGBTQ community? Were people affected by it, where they got in touch with you? Because I think that's what I would think is important. Like I interviewed Michael Boatman, who played a gay character on Spin City, and he's straight, but he said the gay community reached out to him and said, "You did a really good job. You didn't make us look bad." And the same thing with the late Willie Garson on Sex and the City. They said, "You made us look good, and we appreciate that." Were you getting mail from people, or were people reaching out to you to say, "We really appreciate what you're doing"? Because the bottom line is, we're comics, and I always say this: any comic or musician, we're half insecure, we're half narcissistic, where we want the attention, but when we get it, we go, "Wow, I didn't deserve that." But what was the reaction after? Were people reaching out to you in the community?
The problem, what happened was we had planned this. All through the process, she kept saying to me, "I can't wait till we have a grand opening. We'll have a red carpet outside the theater." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And then COVID hit, and it hit just around the time that the film was released. So when it was released, nobody knew about it. It was like you couldn't go see it because there was no place to go see it. Everything was closed. And I felt so bad for her. I mean, she put her heart and soul into this movie, and it wasn't going to happen the way she had envisioned it. And I said to her at the time, I said, "Look, this is not a bad thing necessarily. The universe provides you with circumstances that maybe you should think about going a different way. So let's talk about going a different way." And there are film festivals, and there are colleges, and there are all LGBT groups that would love to have this movie. And so she got involved with this. I forget the name of the company, but you could rent it. Organizations could rent it, uh, and it became very popular among LGBT groups. And we started to get calls for the movie, and I started to get calls about it. And so I said to her, "Why don't we do this? We'll do movie and a show." I said, "Come out and show the movie. I'll do a Q&A after the movie, and then I'll do like a half-hour stand-up." Well, that turned out to be really popular. And so I went when COVID was gone, a year later, whatever it was. I started to travel the country with the film, and still occasionally do it. I'll do whatever I can for her to make it. To make this film. And we do hear from people all over the world. It's in Britain now. You can get it. It's worldwide, really, but uh, it was a good movie. We got really good reaction from it.
Well, earlier you said when you back in the day you couldn't get on any TV shows.
Nothing.
Then you get AGT, but now you did Dry Bar, right? And then you also do More Funny Women of a Certain Age, which I think
Right.
there are so many. There's still a sexism in comedy. I think if people don't understand, if someone's an older woman, I don't think they get booked as much. I think it's just the problem because it's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still bad. So what was the More Funny? That's Carol Montgomery started that, right?
Carol Montgomery, yeah.
Or,
She
how did you get involved with that?
Well, Carol and I, again, like Anita, we've been friends for, we weren't close friends, but when I came back, we reconnected and just, we got to be really good friends really quickly. Well, she calls me when the first special is going to be done, and she said, "Look, I've got this thing with Showtime. I want you on the first show." And I was like, "I'd love to be on the first show." And then about um, about a month and a half before the taping, I had open heart surgery. I didn't know I even had a problem, but I wound up getting quadruple
I
bypass.
know,
Well,
I know. I went through that. I know.
you know, and so she called me, or I called her in January when I came home. I forget who called who, but she goes, "Are you going to be able to do this?" Because we were taping, I believe, in either February or March when they were going to tape. I said, "Yeah." And now I sound like Babe Ruth in his final address at Yankee. Yeah, Carol, I'll be, I'll be there. I'll be there. Well, it became apparent that I couldn't even walk to the toilet without, getting out of breath, and I wasn't about to go to Brooklyn and do a taping. So about a week before the taping, I said, "Look, I just don't think I can do it," and I put her in a bad position. She got I forgot who she got to cover for me. But she said, "Listen, if there is a second show, a second special, and I don't know if there will be, but if there is, you're going to be the first person I call," which I thought was really, nice. Because I was pissed. I was like, here, I finally get a break, and my freaking heart, it's got to die on me. So, true to her word, about 4 or 5 months later, she goes, "We got the second special," and she goes, "This is the date." Yeah. She said, "And if you don't if you have another fucking heart attack, I will come to the hospital room and kill you myself." I said, so, um, that's why I love Carol, because she's a friend. When she's your friend, you won't find anybody truer. She's a great person. I've been very blessed in the people that have come into my life since I transitioned.
Well, and now you mentioned Kathy Caldwell earlier. You two do a podcast on People Comedy Trainwreck. Wonderful Jimmy Corhan runs this great network. He
Who?
put me aboard. He's got a lot of Coleman Green. Some guy named Jimmy Corhan. I don't know. Some guy, you don't know him? I don't know. I think he
No.
goes by James. He tries to be fancy.
Wait,
So tell me
why would
about
he
your
name
podcast.
himself after the Quran? What? Jimmy Quran.
Corhan. Yeah, tell
Corhan,
me about the
Quran.
I'm trying to give him a plug, Julia. Come on. Come on.
Okay.
It's Jimmy. This thing. We're gonna do the Quran. That's the next comedy show. The Quran.
Jimmy
comedy show.
Corhan is, yes. I've known Jimmy for a while. We started out that when I first came back. I think he made a whole bunch of T-shirts for me, and he's just the sweetest. Again, I've been very blessed. He's a sweet man, a very very sweet man, and so we've been friends all these years. What was your question? Oh, podcast with Kathy
I want
Caldwell.
you to promote your podcast because that's you got to promote it because you have a great a live event coming up. But tell me
We
about
do.
why you decided to do the podcast and who are some of the guests you look for. I think did you have Larry Ambrose on?
I had Larry on.
He was just on my show. He's a
Larry's
blast.
Larry's he's a classic. Yeah. And thanks to you, it looks like we're going to get Steven Weber on. He's
Did he email you back?
oh, he's a doll. We've had a couple emails back and forth. Yeah, he's a
Isn't he
really
great? Like he's when I mean honestly, you said that, and I said, you know what? I said, why not? You know, because you never know. And he sent back, "Hey, Coop." And then he turns out, I don't know if he knew of you or he looked
I
you
think
up, and he was
I
like,
think he
"Oh."
did know of me. Yeah, but he
And so
our comedy senses are very much alike. I could tell that from the emails that we've traded. So I can't wait. I'm waiting to get a date from him because of Chicago Med. He's going back to Chicago, I think, this week or so. So
you'll like this. When he did my show, all of a sudden I get a phone call and I get a message, and he's like, "Coop, whatever," and he's like, "I'm walking back from the set. I'm going to the hotel. You know, should we do this on the street?" I'm like, "No, just go to your hotel and relax and get in touch with me like in an hour." But he had just gotten off set, and he told me what happens is you're on set there. You know, his whole life's in LA, and he goes, you go crazy. Like you're not going to go out. He's like, I'm not going to go out drinking. And so he said he loves doing stuff like that because it. But the only problem is, as you know, you did a movie recently. Sometimes you don't know what time you'll be done. If they say, "Hey, they'll never tell you what time you're going to wrap." Then you go, "Holy shit, it's 3 a.m," and you're going, "Well, you know," when of course he's the star, one of the stars of the show. When you're like background or have a small actor, like, "Well, I hope we get into golden time. We get twice the pay." But anyway, enough about Steven Weber. Tell me about your podcast and some of the guests you have, and are you putting a message out there? I mean, what's it all about?
it's called comedy centric, and it's kind of a broad term because it's not about stand ups or it's taken a different form as time has gone on. I had a lot of my friends on at the very beginning. We had Scheidner on, we had Larry on, had Bill Persky, which was one of my favorite interviews to do because has been like an idol of mine for years. Uh, if you don't know who he is, watch an old Dick Van Dyke episode and you'll see Bill Persky, Sam Denoff. He wrote something like 26 episodes, won 5 Emmys. He created Kate and Allie. He created That Girl. This guy is legendary. So that was a joy for me. And he couldn't have been nicer. So, I mean, I'm trying to get my idols. I want to get to know them, because Bill's 93 and let's face it, um, I wanted to meet him before, he went to that great sitcom Writer's Room in the Sky. And so I try to find people that I like to talk to. This thing we're doing with Bree, Colonel Bree Pham, in a couple of, actually, we're doing it on Tuesday. I'm excited about. She is the highest ranking. She's a colonel in this now Space Force. She was a colonel in the Air Force, and she moved over. But she's the the highest ranking transgender officer in all of the services in history. So she's about to lose her pension because of what the incoming administration's stance on trans people. And she said there's 15,000 trans people in our armed forces. And I was just looking over a chapter from her book. She said a couple of pages. Trans people are fighting, they're flying jets. They're in combat. They're doing everything that everybody else does. And yet this he whose name shall not be spoken is trying to get rid of us. And she's very visible, and I can't wait to do this show with her. So that's what's coming
That's
up.
good though. You're out there. You know, it's funny. You're using so many different avenues as a performer. Like back then, we just did stand up, but you've been in movies, you did a documentary, you have a podcast, all that. You did a dry bar special, right?
Did a dry bar special, yeah. That was a
Do you have to
couple of
wear
years
clean
back.
for that? Because I know you like.
Oh,
I know you like to curse. What was that like trying to wear clean for like an hour?
I it was, well, you only do a half an hour, so it wasn't too bad. I I mean, I'm not as dirty as people think I am. I'm not really. I'm saucy. I like to think of myself as saucy. Uh, here's
That's your next
the way
special.
I, yeah. For me, words are they're colors on my palette. As a writer, uh, my hero is Gene Shepherd. The Christmas Story movie. I've been reading his stuff since I was a kid. The way he creates scenes in a person's head with his writing is what I strive to do on stage. So if it requires me saying fuck that, it's only because I've tried everything else and nothing works. So I have no problem with using, some language, but it's not necessary for me. Uh, so I'm not as dirty as everyone thinks I am. Simon Cowell
Yeah,
said I was
I think I
naughty.
always. Well, there you go. That's it. Well, that's Simon Cowell.
Well,
So
he
anyway,
said,
uh,
Julie, you're naughty, naughty. That's the way it was. It's like having
you got
Stanley
two naughties.
Laurel
Naughty,
tell me I was
naughty.
naughty, huh?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I always ask this question. It's the last question I always ask. When
Okay.
you look back at and you've had a very different career and you've had a life and you've gone through a lot, what are a few things that you're most proud about? And I always get different answers. I interviewed someone who was an actor, and they said, "We've worked. I've been able to pay my kids, 3 kids through college by doing the craft, acting, what I love, not getting another job. There's low times, there's high times. But when you look back, what are a few things that make you really proud about your life? Looking back,
Well, I think my life began when I transitioned. My real life, my true life began. And I think that after 25 years, which is how long I've been Julia, and I look back and I see what I overcame. And I don't want to make this sound like I'm some kind of, you know, it just the situations presented themselves to me. I met them and I overcame them. And things like getting back, becoming a teacher. I had no college experience. I went back and I did, you know, I graduated college with honors. That I'm proud of. Getting back into comedy when there was no hope. There should be no reason for me to be back in comedy at my age. I got back at, at 60 or 61 or something like that. And I managed to do the things in the second half of my life that I never could accomplish in the first half. And I think it had to do with believing, in yourself and being your true self. Rick Scotti was not me. It was somebody I had to be to survive. But it wasn't me. Julia is me. And when you have that gives you a freedom and a courage, and to move, to do things you never thought you could do. So I think this second half of my life, I'm I'm proud of the things I've accomplished, like AGT, stuff like that.
so well, that's great. You've done a lot, and you should be proud of yourself. And I want to thank you for coming on. How can people get in touch with you? I know you have a website, and you're very funny on Facebook. You post a lot. I don't know. You always run into Jesus at was it 7-Eleven or Wawa. You're always
At
running
the
into
Wawa,
Jesus.
Jesus
I'm
at the
like,
Wawa.
yeah, there
He's
you go.
going to be
Tell me, how
making
can
an
people get in touch?
appearance soon. No, he will be making an appearance soon. There's a
I'm
whole
waiting.
series of.
It's a new year.
Well, you should explain this. I do this. I write these little short stories, but bumping into Jesus at the Wawa, and he's basically looks like a homeless guy, but we're never really sure if he's the real Jesus or if he's just a guy named Jesus or something. So I've left it, ambiguous like that over the years. I am on social media a lot. I'm on Threads. I'm on Facebook. I'm on what's the other one? I
Instagram,
can't remember. Instagram. I'm on
Blue Sky.
Instagram too. No, I'm not on Blue Sky. you know what? Three is enough. That's all. I'm not going to be. I don't give a shit about Blue Sky or any of them. Just I don't even want to do the ones I'm doing, but they tell me I have to. So I'll just continue to write stupid shit. That's what I do and put it up on there.
So people look up Julia. If you see her in her town, go laugh. She's so funny. Also, Julia Scotti, funny that way. Make sure you rent that. Yeah, I think you can get it on. You can watch it. You can follow me at Cooper Talk on Threads and Twitter and Blue Sky. Also at Cooper Talk 1 on Instagram. Facebook, I'm Steve Cooper. You can email me at cooper@coopertalk.net, which besides this show, I have Cooper Talk, which I've done over 1,030 episodes, where I have over 65 members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 5 members of the East Street Band, Emmy winners, Oscar winners, or on YouTube, you can find the Coop Tank, which is my weekly panel. I moderate a panel of 3 local business people. So check that all out. Also, don't forget to go to Comedy Trainwreck. Jimmy's got a lot of great shows there. Julia's show's on there. Corey Alexander has a show. Coleman Green, Kensel, and Wid. There's just a bunch of good programming there, and Jimmy does a lot for the community. So check that out.
Does.
And you know what? I want to thank my sponsors. Laurel Lanes, check them out there. It's a fun time. I go there for happy hour. You get a $2.50 beer and a $5 appetizer. You can't go wrong. But it's laurellainesnj.com. It's on Route 73 in Maple Shade. So next week we have the very funny Stuart Pankin. You know him from Not Necessarily the News and Dinosaurs.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and a great movie called Hollywood Nights. So people, thank you for watching or listening, and keep following us. And you can go to there's I was going to say gift shop. There's a merch shop where they have Jamie set up where there's the Coop's Comedy Corner logo, an alternative Coop's Comedy logo, and right now a Coop Tank logo. So you can get some great stuff there. So thank you, people.
Comedy Centric stuff. You get Comedy Centric
and Comedy Centric stuff. So there you go. Julie's trying to steal my my money just because she did AGT, and I'm just a guy behind a fucking mic. Anyway, people, have a great day, and I'll see you next week.
Coop's Comedy Corner.